Okay, good evening, everyone. There's been a little break on this webcast, Rise in Unity. I welcome you today from Helsinki, but we are actually going to teleport ourselves to Niger. It's a country in West Africa, and I'm here with my amazing friend and colleague, Kader Kaneye, and I call him Kad, right, Kad?
Hey, guys.
So we are here on a webcast, Rise in Unity, trying to figure out, this is episode 12, we're trying to figure out how do we come up as a strong community in any space that you live in, and try to bring in that potential together to come out from the crisis of the pandemic, of the racism debate, and how can we really bloom where we're planted. I work with diversity inclusion in Finland. I'm also a change maker working across different countries. I'm Uzbek originally, but I also I feel very much connected to Denmark, where I spent my definitive 12 years studying and working. And then moving to Finland, I got into this Global Dignity community where we are across 80 countries, and Kad is working with Global Dignity Niger. And so we want to discuss how community resilience is really coming to life, and how can we really be there for each other instead of, going away from our own little circles, and help each other in the most harshest circumstances. There is economic uncertainty, there is problems with education, remote work, remote schooling. And so I have the most amazing guest, Kad. I'm super happy to have you. You're from Niamey, Niger, and you're a social entrepreneur. You're founder of African Development University, where you basically trying to educate the future leaders of your own country, but also in the Sahel region. And we met in Geneva last year at the strategic retreat for global dignity leaders, just to see how we extend the dignity so it's more deeper and more impact. And so you said that you actually left after 15 years of working in international organizations, highest executive level, to banking, to professional service. You actually just retreated and said, nope, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to start my own university.
Yes, and more. In fact, when I was doing this 15 years of accounting work, my focus was on fighting against corruption.
Okay.
And it was really my way of seeing development coming in my country and the neighboring countries where I was working. Corruption is huge in this industry. So I was using my accounting skills to fight against that. And I think after 15 years, I just realized I lost the fight.
Right.
And I went to grad school, and that's where I tweaked my approach to move from curation to prevention. And I wanted to set up a university that will educate ethical leaders, so that maybe in one generation or so, we will not need to fight against this systemic corruption, because people will just make the right decisions. So that's how the natural transition came to be.
Right. So, Kad, if you can come closer to the screen, and so that I don't see the reflection.
Like this.
Better. Yeah. So everyone who's listening, we are kind of in Niger, and you can find out about Niger culture, what community means for Niger community people, and Kad is the greatest ambassador that you can have right now, and this is the summer edition of Rise in Unity webcast. So let's get involved and engaged and learn about each other, and what we can learn from Niger here in Finland or in Uzbekistan. So how have you been, Kad, in this COVID pandemic? Was it 4 months now?
Yes, 4 months now, and I guess it was a roller coaster. Honestly, at the very beginning, it was different and exciting for me. When something like this that big happens, so I see an opportunity to really have a huge impact, and take ownership of the situation and lead in crisis, and. So it started like
sorry, did you have a lockdown as well Like,
Yes, we did. We had the lockdown, and lots of schools were closed, mosques were closed. The price of commodities went just up. We're a landlocked country.
okay.
The supply chains were disrupted, and as a consequence, there was an unbalance in the supply and demand on the markets. Everything went crazy, honestly. And then for me, it was exciting at the beginning. Then I went through a very tough situation due to the lockdown and some internal family dynamics that we were not used to. And then we had to stabilize that, and I think now I'm back to being happy and excited.
Okay. That's how I know you, at least. You're always resilient. You're like, yo, I'm so cool, I'm chill. We're gonna get through that. We're gonna be with the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Still, with all that happened, I still think 2020 is one of my best years. For me, not living this year will have really been something I will have regretted. So I know it's tough. I know it's unpredictable. I know it changed everything. But for me, it's like an adventure that is worth living. And we're building currently as we speak the souvenirs that we will share with the future generations.
amazing. That's so fascinating. So the idea with you is you built a crowdsourced a university where you bring people from, I mean, faculty members from Harvard, where you went to school, from MIT, from all the leading education institutions in the world to Niger. And so you teach them African moral values. And so tell us how it happened. You started something that you planned for 3 years in 3 months. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate, I have to say that, and I got lots of people who came to really help me, and that has been the DNA of the university from the start. So we had this plan to start in 3 years.
Okay.
We came to Niger, and one of my best friends at grad school, Meredith Sigol, she used to be in President Obama's campaign, so she's really good in organizing. So she came down in Niger, and we started talking to students, their parents, to the community leaders, to the first lady, then the president, then the government, then the private sector. And like the feedback was overwhelmingly the same. Like everyone wanted a world-class university in the country, and that inspired us to help, to ask them for help. And the whole community came together. More than 200 people came as volunteers. We didn't have money, we didn't have faculty, we didn't even have the premises to launch the university.
So where did you go physically?
Yeah. So physically, what I did was to reach out to these companies and tell them, hey, listen, you are not going to use your meeting room every single day, right? So can I have it on Monday morning? And then for you, can I have it on Tuesday afternoon? And then can I have it on Wednesday morning? So I had meeting rooms all over the city in different companies. And I was going to start the university in these meeting rooms, because that was really good, because we didn't have to pay water, electricity, internet, and so on and so forth, because these were well-established companies. But then one of the CEOs told me, hey, so from what you described to me, you are going to build like a mini nation, a model nation, where the community will live together and interact and build values, and so that they can go out in the real world and make a difference. So how are you going to do that if you keep changing from one space to another, and where you don't have your own like your own premises where you can have your rituals, your habits, and your corporate culture? So that was a very good question. I told him, yeah, we will get there. We will absolutely, one day we will be as big and prestigious as the best universities in the world. But for now, that's just what I can afford, right?
Right.
And then he offered to use one of his old buildings, a very, very old building that he owned. And he said he could not renovate it, but if we want to use it, we are free to do so. We went and saw the place. It was quite nice, but it was in such a terrible state that you couldn't do anything. So we came with these volunteers, these 200 people, and we cleaned it up on our own. We cleaned the toilets, like it was like a ghost house. So we spent days cleaning it, and we did an open house day. And when we did open house day, one of the guys who showed up at the end, he was impressed with the curriculum, but he said, "Are you really going to do a world-class university in this crappy place?" I was like, "Yes, it's a starting point. One day we will get there."
The power of desire. That's it, right?
Yeah, and then he the next day he sent people with paint to repaint the building.
Yeah.
And we used that to go see one of his competitors and say, "Hey, the president of the country is supporting this initiative. This guy just repainted the whole building." And he's like, "Why didn't you tell me I could have offered the paint too?" I was like, "Yeah, but we didn't ask him. He offered on his own. But you know what? We have the toilets that are not ready." And he did all the 9 toilets of the building. He renewed them brand new. And that's how we managed to start in a very small place.
Yeah.
But now we moved in a much bigger one 3 years down the road, and our ambitions are really, really growing and growing. So that's how it happened. Really, lots of good fortune and the goodwill of the people who came together to make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
This is amazing. So there is 70% of your students are women today. Is that so?
70%, yes.
Right. And how many students are enrolled?
A little less than 200 now.
Okay. Great. We have some greetings here from our colleagues. Bhushan Dahal, hello. Our brother from Nepal, Global Dignity Nepal, and she says #United Kindness. That's absolutely Unite Kindness for sure. Nice to have you with us. And then Alana O'Donnell from US, from New York, she says, "What a great idea to save resources and let company know about your initiative." So that's, she's listening in, and nice to have Alana. So, but I guess it's still interesting for people just to know the basics about Niger. So what I did, I did a quick study because I knew I was going to talk to you. So now this is the time to see if I got it right. So there is a common misunderstanding that Niger is Nigeria. It's not. There is a river, 3rd largest river in the world, no? Niger?
In Africa.
Yeah. In Africa, yes. And then there's Niger. It's in West Africa. People speak French. And then there's Nigeria, where they speak English.
Yes.
Right? And and it's so knowing about Niger, I didn't know before I met you. That's how it is last year. And and that is how we are all ambassadors to our own countries. Uzbekistan is not so famous. Finland, they think it's in Sweden. Finland is 5.5 million, right? And Niger is 22.5 million. Uzbekistan is 34 million. So there are a lot of countries which need to be promoted from storytelling and projects like yours, community building, that we are together and we're in this together, we're all people. So on the downside, what I've learned about Niger is that it's least developed country in the world. It's not the best place. I mean, it's okay. The economy. I read weird stuff about women rights, but also that it's in desert. So I mean, it's like total opposite in so many ways. Like 80% of Finland is covered in forests, you know. And then you're like living. So
I think 70% of Niger is desert.
20%. Okay. So you have 70%. So that's quite close to what Finland has in terms of forests. So, but tell us, what is community what does community mean in Niger? Like, how do you start a community in our terms, ways, finding people who are like-minded, finding resources to be part of community, to build the trust? How does it work? Just really basic.
I think traditionally communities in Niger are based on a strong notion of identity. And people define their identity either by their ethnic group, you know, or their geography, east,
Yeah.
west, north, and south Niger, or their religion,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
So the communities, traditional communities we have were built around that, with the ethnical group one being very strong,
Yeah.
followed by the religious one and the geographical one. I will say that's how people relate to each other
Yeah. This.
mostly here. But in our situations, we start to see new communities emerging around strong ideas of bringing change in one way or another,
Yeah.
positively or negatively, and those became like political parties,
Yeah.
associations, or movements like our university. Like IDU is almost, so some people joke and saying IDU is a cult because
ADU
we are so
or
committed to changing the world around us,
right.
and we are so much likely minded, and driven by servant leadership, that whenever we engage in something, this something becomes big, and really brings things that people are not used to see around here.
Right.
So these are the different types of community, I guess, you can identify in this part
Yeah.
of the world.
So in that sense, ADU stands for African Development University. So I'm just trying to decipher your acronym. So university is in fact a community space, right? Because that's where people already identify with your brand, with the message, with the whole study subjects, or like whatever they study and major in. So how has this become, or like how has university really became a community during the COVID, and how did it respond? Because you had the lockdown. So what happened?
Yeah, so I would say the notion of community at AGU is really strongly based on our culture.
Okay.
We have a very, very strong and unique culture that drives people towards us. Whoever wants to make a difference, usually they will come to AGU. And as a matter of fact, you can go in other schools where the learning is happening and things are happening, but they don't see themselves as a community, and you can't identify the pillars of a community in these spaces. So I guess our culture is really what makes us somehow different here. And so in terms of COVID, we were really taken by surprise, being here in this country, people don't see, people didn't see COVID as a big risk, because people are always, surviving. They're busy surviving. To today, most people in the country don't believe in the COVID as a disease. So we were monitoring the situation of Ashesi University, our mentor university in Ghana, and we were taking these protective measures already, like wash hands and try to limit the time on campus and these things. When out of sudden the president came for a message to the nation and said, like, COVID is real, this is what's happening, and the day after today, all the schools close, all the mosques close, borders, airports, etc., etc. So people were really, really taken by surprise, and us as well. So we use one of the days to do an intensive training on how to learn online.
Okay.
And we use the other day to do a party, because we always celebrate, and we didn't know when we'll come back together. So we wanted we wanted to appreciate each other
Party
before we
before the
disappear.
lockdown. This is big trouble. Okay. So how do you party in the university? Is it like get together? What was that?
Yeah.
Did you make a speech?
Say, no. We have. I told you, we moved to a nicer campus. We even have a swimming pool in that campus. So it was well adapted to just celebrate each other. And we did just that, celebrating the faculty, the students, the administrative, the leadership teams, and we say goodbye to each other. We just didn't know when this thing will finish, and we are a very, very strong community.
Okay.
So we also had a kind of town hall discussion.
Okay.
Where with the students, we came to realize that if COVID is that serious, and we are going to go back in our homes and be okay and come back when we finish, we'll just be saving ourselves. And somehow, as a community, it's a failure for us because our campus is just in front of like a slum, you know, where poor people live in huts. And you know, their kids sometimes don't even go to school. With all these things, and we were like, our students were leading the discussion, and they were saying, we cannot allow ourselves to stick to that. And they organized themselves. They used one of these days before the lockdown to go in this village and to share with the community. They did fundraising first, and they create the liquid soap themselves.
Yeah.
They did the mask themselves.
Okay.
And they went to the communities to distribute these things, and also to have like focus groups based on the influent people within the communities to explain to them how they should be responsible of making sure everyone is washing their hands, that social distancing is being practiced, and so on and so forth. We were extremely proud of them, honestly. They did so great. And then we went on vacation, on break, let's say, and 1 week during that we put all the teams together to put together the online platform.
Yeah.
And 1 week after that, we asked all the students to come back online because the semester will be continuing normally. And that was really an exceptional feat. Like no university in the country did that. And some of the students started to have difficulties to access to the internet platform.
Okay.
We went to see the main telco operator to ask them to provide like 5 gigs of internet for each student.
Okay.
But the negotiation ended up with them whitelisting our server, so any students can just get their courses for free as long as it's on our platform. And then we went to the Ministry of Higher Education to share our solution with them, and telling them we were ready to help them bring that to the whole student population in Niger. We have like 100,000 student population, and at ADU we have less than 200. So we know what we are doing was too little if we are really to bring change at scale. So they were very happy about that, and they asked us to help them do the public universities first, because that's where 60% of the student population is, and that's what we did. So we went from this small university with less than 200 students to have an impact on potentially 60,000 students because of this crisis. So really, this crisis for us is a huge blessing. Amazing. We gain an influence. The ministry cannot take any decision without inviting us. I chaired the committee for technological solutions for public universities, coming from a private university. It was just great, really. So,
but it's great that they open up and really want to collaborate, because that's always the case, right? It's this happen.
So that's where a crisis is interesting, because in normal times they will have not agreed, but because of the crisis, you know, people think differently, and things just become easier.
Well, that's a great way to show leadership in this. This is really, really inspiring to hear. I just want to tell you that last week, or was it 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I was a speaker on Ambitious Africa Initiative. So this is a community driven by students from Finland, where they're trying to build cooperation with African whole continent, and they do it by there's a specific day. There's a national day of Niger, national day of Mozambique, national day Uganda. So I was on the event as a national day Uganda, speaking on what we're doing from Hanken University. So I work at part-time at Hanken School of Economics, which is Finnish university business school, one of the oldest in the Nordics, and they were the first one to go online and to basically do remote schooling and remote learning. And so it's an initiative that's trying to build connections on 3 E's, like education, entertainment, and entrepreneurship. So they bring in speakers from different countries, and they try to make it as a platform for networking. And this is excellent. I think your students and yourself and all of those, it's really nice to kind of, bridge in to Finland. And there's, of course, these Nordic speakers out there. So one of the speakers, he's Vesa Perala, he's from Finland, and he runs this Clanet platform, online learning. He said that the whole online and e-learning platforms market, digital market, edtech market went like 3-5 years ahead because of this. And on the other of COVID, that they really accelerated this. And so I work with international students where I try to bring them to Finnish companies so they can, get a student job, internship, traineeships. And now a lot of companies are trying to survive, and it's everyone is affected. But whenever we can, we try to do mentoring opportunities, events online. So like it also needs adaptation from students to be resilient and to feel that they can be part of Finnish community as well. So different challenges, but really nice to hear. So tell me about.
We should really connect to these guys. Please connect us after.
I'll be happy to link you to them. And one of them, one of the founding members, Peter Westerbacka, he's this community in chief. I call him in Finnish community. He's been also on my webcast talking about branded communities and how. Every community offers a brand and it can live by itself. So there is a different way of looking at it. So tell me about African moral values in short, three key moral values that you're trying to educate your students.
Oh, sure. So the first one is no Zamba. Zamba is an African word meaning it's more like don't be evil,
No Zamba?
No Zamba, yeah. No is like the English word no, but yeah. Zamba means kind of being evil. So like no evil. Okay. If I should say it in English, it's basically reminds us as Africans that throughout our history, the general interest has always been beyond the personal interest. So whenever you are in charge or whatever, just think of the group and the larger community before you can think of yourself. So this is like one of the first things that we insist on when we in our like grounding our education and African moral values. The second is sharing everything. Like if you see how we grew up as Africans, we used to wait for everyone to be there before we eat, and we used to eat in the same big plate with our hands in an approach of sharing, where even when there is a piece of meat in the plate, you will see the eldest person cut it in small pieces and sharing it with everyone else. So it's really this notion of whatever benefit and good deed or goodwill happens to you, share it with others. So that's like the second thing. And the third one, which is also related, is the notion of responsibility. So we always insist on the fact that if you are in this university, by default, that means you have somewhere to sleep. You have at least one meal a day. When you're sick, someone will bring you to a form of doctor to heal you. Okay. And maybe your biggest worry is when your phone falls down with the screen, and you break your screen. But at the same time, 90% of the people of your generation, when they wake up in the morning, their first question is, am I going to eat? And if they solve this question, then the next question becomes, what am I going to eat? Because most of the time they don't eat out of pleasure, they eat out of necessity to ease the pain of the hunger. So we bring that a lot, and we study that with historical events and historical figures and like social dynamics inspired from our different empires and societies.
Yeah.
So they can always remind themselves that the moment they become this privilege, they are responsible to lift the other non-privileged people, so that, let's say, their kids and the kids of these poor people have the same opportunities. These are things that always you'll see throughout our curriculum, throughout the years, through our town halls. These are concepts that we always discuss in the various realities.
Yeah. Alana's adds here to your previous speak, what you talked about universities. Amazing work, God. I think so too, Alana. So, what is then? You're a well-traveled man. You have studied your work. You basically know how the world goes around. And what are the ways you look at the U.S. What's going on with Black Lives Matter? You look at the anti-racism work. You look at the European affairs. What are the things that people, let's say, okay, now I'm talking from Europe, right? What are the things that you could think that the people who speak Hausa, right? Hausa?
Hausa mainly, yeah.
Zama, is it so?
Zama. Oh, you did your homework very well.
I did, yes. So what could people of Niger inspire people in Europe, in Finland, in terms of community building, or like even just like perspective on life, perspective on togetherness, on Ubuntu? What is it that you would share?
I would definitely say resilience. I guess the power of resilience is something that is truly not a concept here, but something that you get to experience every single day. Like, life is so hard here. You mentioned it earlier in our women in. They said Niger is the worst country to be born a woman in the world. There's a challenge here. If you're a young person, there's a challenge there. If you're a senior person, there's a challenge. If you're an entrepreneur, there's a challenge. Like life is so difficult. I mean, even the climate is so tough here. It's like 40 degrees under the shadow, and 50 something when you walk normally outside. So everything is so hard, and people manage here to not only bear the situation, but to adapt to it and get moments of happiness during this, like in this, like what happens, I can say, in Europe or in the US, it's almost seasonal, it's cyclical. Every summer, there's a racism, something happening in the US, right?
Yeah.
This year is no exception, and probably next year will be no exception. The emotions and the media coverage are probably not the same, but the reality is the same. Since I first discovered the US in 2013, every single summer I see this type of things happening. But then after the summer, people go back to their lives, and things go well. And then in France, they have Gilets jaunes. They forgot about that. So imagine something this painful that is constant. That's what our realities are in our societies. So I guess the fact that we learn not to react, but to adapt while we improve things, that's our version, our definition of resilience. And that resilience, I think, is something that these communities can learn from. And look at what's happening. I'm a Black person. I was very hurt with the recent events in the US. It went in the emotional phase, it went in the denial phase, it went in the phase where I didn't want to hear anything related to that, nor to read anything related to that. And it went to a level where the young people in my neighborhood with whom I will discuss, they will see it as them against us. That as long as we're Black, all the white people hate us, it became like a French thing against us Africans from Francophone countries. And I think there's such a huge risk in this situation. I mean, like the black community is being targeted with systematic racism in the US. But this situation is also fueling anger at a level where black people elsewhere from the US can target black people because of what's happening in the US. And I think all this can be solved if we really have a better approach of what I think the way we define resilience, the way that when this type of things happen, we sit down and discuss
dialogue
and try to find. So like a few years, I mean, might be 20 or more, 30 something years back, or maybe 40. The ethnical groups in Niger were fighting each other. East versus West. You mentioned the languages, Hausas versus Zarmas, and so on and so forth. Because our countries have been just designed by the colonizer without taking into account who's living where. They just randomly do their thing, and then from one day to the other, people were forced to live together, and they didn't all accept that. So we had we had it was a national policy of sending people from one ethnical group work in a geographical area majority dominated by the other group. Throughout the years, people got to marry each other, and we are the descendants of these people. Where I cannot say I'm a Hausa or I'm a Jarma. Probably I'm half or 1/4, or my wife is Jarma and I'm Hausa, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I guess these ways, we're in Africa, so we don't have the hype to inspire people. But sometimes the way we solve our issues can really be a big lesson for your world, for the first world, I would say. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to manage the noise here in my background. So I guess there needs to be more dialogue and more exchange of how we deal and with conflicts, reconciliation and peace building, on really basic level. One of the great things that I've experienced on, bringing Pan-African Understanding, it was 2016. There was a Chimurenga Pan-African Space Station pop-up in Helsinki, and it was curated by one of the great, it actually was a team effort, but Ahmed Al-Navas and Christopher Vessels, they basically took the whole Finnish library and turned it into like a little utopian, futuristic, where we're going with African awareness, the culture, the music, the readings. I even have an article I wanted to show you. Is this Chimurenga Chronic? I don't know if you get those.
No.
It's really quite creative, quite critical newspaper what's going on in Africa. Talking about the philanthropy complex here, how to be a Nigerian. That was interesting. So yeah, that was really a profound way for me to say, wow, there's this whole world out there that we don't know. And I've been to Africa 3 times. I'm to three African countries, to Tanzania, to Zimbabwe, passing through, and South Africa last year, and just a little in Youngstown in Zambia. So it was mind-blowing, crazy, breaking my whole information, because when I grew up, it was only Sahara, And then I also read tales about Limpopo River. It wasn't the Limpopo River, it was the Limpopo Valley. And then suddenly I crossed through it. It's actually, Limpopo River is in north of South Africa, filled with crocodiles. I actually saw them. So it was quite, how to say it, we need much more of these international dialogue, international. Even when I work with international students, we all bring our culture with us, and then when they come and move across the countries, that resource, the cultural understanding and perspective of views, it's a benefit. And this is what I try to say, like, okay, don't run away from who you are. Just, um, keep your origin, on keep your identity. And there's a lot of discussion in Europe about assimilation, that is,
Yeah.
the integration, that we say, listen, it's fine, we can really how to say it, co-create the new life, uh, and then there's a project in Denmark, I remember, called Foreigners Don't Leave Us Alone with the Danes. That was about how it would be boring to be in homogeneous group, and we all enrich each other in our lives, and we can marry across nations or ethnic groups, and stuff like that. So yeah, on this note, I wanted to ask you, last question. What is so what is the future of African Development University, and how is Global Dignity activities part of that, if at all?
Oh, sure. So let's start with Global Dignity. What, since I joined, actually since I discovered the network, we put the Global Dignity fundamentals in our curriculum. It's in the so when new students join, they have a bridge program. Just to get to know how we do things here. So different, learn English and so on and so forth.
Right.
So we integrate the Global Dignity values, and the curriculum was so well structured. It was part of what we were doing already, but in a much less structured way. So it gave us the structure to really transmit these values that we care so much about. And I can say that's one of the bigger ways that Global Dignity is helping us advance in our in the work we're doing. And in terms of the future of ADU, we're really growing. We're growing fast. Next year, we're waiting for 250 new students, so we're going to double our current student population.
Okay.
And for the next 10 years, we really intend to be like the reference university in the Sahel in terms of academic excellence and community impact. And I think we're really on track for that. So whoever wants to be part of the story, please join us. And now you can even teach online. So it's you can do it from all over the world.
Amazing. So anyone who is listening, you can join and actually be part of the African Development University as a lecturer, right?
Yes.
And teach online, co-create the environment from the comfort of your home, and engage with Niger students. Great. And so the lesson learned for the Sahel region, what are those? Because we know that
in terms of the COVID or overall.
The COVID for the Sahel region that you represent. And what is the Sahel region, if you can tell the listeners?
So the Sahel region is this part between the Sahara Desert, like the Arab countries of Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, between that part and the tropical part of Africa, starting with Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana. So it's like this band, which is not a desert, but it's like a savanna, a dry place where it rains very little, and the common countries which share common challenges, like Mauritania, like Senegal, like Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad. All these countries are kind of considered the Sahel.
Okay.
And I guess the lessons we learn during the COVID are mostly related to what I was mentioning to you, the resilience, because these countries really face the crisis much better than most African countries and most countries in the world. Because they were already in a constant struggle, I guess this was just an additional external shock. Because they are used to shocks, they built such a strong resilience. And in terms of peace, security, and governance, of course, the situation is a little bit worrisome. Elections are coming, and not all the countries are ready for that because of the stopping of all the activities during the COVID situation.
Yeah.
And also on the brighter side, these skirmishes between the military and the rebel or terrorist groups. They also stopped during the COVID situation. It's like they stopped. There was a truce between during the COVID situation. It's amazing. Like you see, they all have moral codes somehow, and they stopped all the guerrilla style attacks until the government lifted the COVID measures, and now they started again fighting. So yeah, I heard some of your countries haven't practiced lockdown, right?
Well, only Sweden actually. It's Sweden has
So
how
did it for them?
Well, it did hit them quite a lot. So the death count increased quite high, and then they brought in some restrictions, but still, like right now, all the countries in the Nordics are opening up, and Sweden is like the left out, and it's quite a big influence on the interregional relationships. Nordic region, so Norway, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, and Baltic countries, they praise themselves. We want to be the most Nordic, the most integrated region in the world, and this, we want to do it the other way. It really kind of put a big stain on relations, and now if you go to Sweden, you will be on quarantine. I don't think it's even open the air traffic yet. 27th, we can travel to Denmark, so I can go visit my friends. So it's and it's easing down here in Finland. So it's nice to be with friends again, and outside restaurants are open, cafes are being open, and so now I'm in a summer cottage. So it's strawberries are coming soon. So hopefully everything goes back to normal, but we don't know yet. Everyone is expecting second waves and third waves and whatnot. But thank you, God, for sharing with us. It's been really inspiring to hear that this is the best year for you, going from university teaching of 200 students to having impact to 60,000 students in Niger. It's unbelievable, and it's incredible work. And now that everyone who wants to teach, who can teach and be part of the African Development University. I want to open university in Uzbekistan as well. So
I will help you.
we're in a nice connection here, Finland, Niger, Uzbekistan, because there's always the most important is context and relevance and how you actually make it grow. And I think that what you're doing with community resilience through Global Dignity curriculum, and also through your values, African moral values, and I want to read them through. Hang on. What I wrote down, you said, don't be evil. No Zamba. Then you said the second value in Africa is sharing, the African moral value that you teach your students. And the third one is being responsible, and also I think grateful, because you talk about some people don't have food to eat, where they only worry about their mobile phone being broken. Yeah. So it's also the gratitude, which I also saw in India. They teach in gratefulness course. Their kids. Yeah. So those who learn to get it all, But thank you. I hope that those of you who listened, you got to know a little bit about Niger. What I didn't say about Niger is that it houses the second largest reserve in Africa, right?
Water, yes. So in the future, it will be one of the greatest countries. When water will be more important than oil.
Okay. So I can't wait to visit your country. What I will say is that if you have that value, I want to share with you the resilience word, which is closest to resilience in Finnish. It's sisu. So sisu, the 4-letter word, is this ability of persons, of people to withstand, to be resilient, to notorious and have that grit. It doesn't really explain that, but that's what they say. The Finnish miracle is that how they won the wars and came out from, you know, the model of Finland was going from survival to success story, being a third world country after the World War II to really becoming one of the poster child of innovation. So yeah, it's I think we got great insights how to stay and rise in unity. This will be available on YouTube, and get in touch, and let's promote the community cultures, because that's all I know that helped me, and I know that Kader is also doing it in your university. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kader.
Thank you. And thanks, Alana. She says, great conversation. Thank you for an inspiring afternoon. I thank you also, Alana, for being with us. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.